Yeah, well, there's a natural tendency in our hearts, I think, that as adults, we need reverence without joy. Whereas as children, a lot of times the joy is actually the sign of the reverence, you know? And I was laughing the other day. I went into a church and I was just sitting there for personal prayer, talking to the Lord. And I was looking in the front, and there was this woman, probably in her 60s or something like that, in the front with a veil, like just devoutly praying the rosary.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to that. I was like, man, that is like so powerful. Like, I wonder how many rosaries she's prayed. I wonder if she comes here regularly. Like, the Lord was just letting my mind go there. And then a young mom came in with a little one, and the little one just starts running around. And the woman stays faithful to the rosary she's praying, just like that. The mom's like going around with the little one, like pointing at the stained glass and the imagery on the walls. And the Lord was just bringing my heart to an understanding that like both of those are so beautiful, and they're beautiful because in his presence, we should be reverent and joyful, that those don't have to be separate. They should be together. Now, what really pushed me is I felt like at one point I was like, oh man, I really want to like take my prayer time here, Lord. And I'm just watching this little one because it's so entertaining, but in like a beautiful way. Yeah. And, he was just reminding me of that scripture verse, let ones such as these come to me, you know, that like, man, sometimes I think in the name of reverence, we can squash people's joy. And I want to just watch for that because, again, to your point, Dan, like whenever we're seeing something online with the Eucharist, if I just saw a bunch of somber people around it, and I want to differentiate somber from reverent, but if I perceived it just to be a bunch of somber people around something, I would think to myself, I wonder if they love what they're unto, right? Like, but you can kind of tell a difference between a somberness that feels like it has to happen versus a reverence that's chosen. Yeah. And the same thing with joy. When joy comes in, it doesn't devolve from reverence; it stays there. But anyway,
I'm wrestling with the way you said that earlier. I think it's awesome that I forget how you phrased it, but the joy, that joy is
for a young person, joy is actually the mark of reverence.
Mark of reverence. And I'm thinking about my kids, right? That how do you describe reverence? It's like it's a devotion, it's a focus.
Yeah, right.
And when I see my kids devoted or focused to something that's meaningful and important, like it is often.
Yeah, there's something about the joy that comes from them, and I don't know,
accompanied by joy.
Yeah, I feel like we have to learn something from that.
And
I think we do.
and oftentimes we, sorry to cut you off.
No.
we will we'll try to stifle that in order to create some sort of a I don't know, an in my image expression of what it means to be devoted to something or what it means to be reverent to something. Dan, you and I were talking the other day about the idea that in our faith journey, especially as fathers leading our children, like we have to intentionally teach them what it means to have a relationship with the Lord where you're actually fostering affection.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Where you're intentionally like loving
God.
yeah.
I was talking to my kids because I was like, I see you at Mass and I don't see your hearts activated. And like just talking like, so we sat down and we talked about, how do you have affection towards, and if reverence, if our idea of quote reverence lacks affection or love, then it probably is, I don't know, is it authentic, right? That my heart should be drawn into this reality of the Eucharist or the reality of the Mass, and that when my heart is drawn into that which I love, joy should come. And so like that's you don't see people not smiling at a wedding, right? And the Eucharist and the Mass, it's supposed to be a wedding feast, not a funeral, right? And so if our common experience, and you see this unfortunately a lot with Catholic schools, it's like the kids are marched into the Catholic Church as if like they're soldiers forced to sit down, and they're just told to be quiet, as opposed to like enter into prayer, like love the Lord. Like there was reverence is not simply be quiet. Reverence is I've encountered the power of the Almighty God, and out of fear and wonder and awe, I fall to my knees and I adore. Yeah. And so how do we form young people to have authentic reverence that's drawn into the mystery, as opposed to the behavior of what we call reverence, which is sit down, shut up, and behave.
Can you two speak a little bit more to this? So as fathers, that you have a perspective on this that I don't yet have, but I love what you're saying about affection. I feel like in the faith, it's probably fair to say that reverence for the sake of reverence is good, but reverence in affection is great. And sometimes the good can become the enemy to the great, I think. And so I wonder, like, how do you I guess, like, how do you teach your children, like, hey, reverence means that we do operate in the church differently than we operate at a theme park, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to make a distinction there. But it doesn't mean that you have to get rid of all of the excitement that you would have at a theme park. It just, like, I guess there seems to be nuance there, and I wonder, like, how you teach that, or maybe you just let it go. And then,
I was thinking as Dan was speaking that we could probably dedicate a whole show to this, maybe many shows. But I think the secret to me is modeling. Like, I've got to make sure that I'm not just zoned out, sitting silently at mass. Because that can be a temptation, right? That my whole world is filled with noise. So oftentimes I'll find myself when I go up to the adoration chapel that I'm not actually in a place of adoration right now. I'm just in a place of escape.
Yep.
Because I need that.
Because I needed quiet.
So maybe that's just me. I don't know. But my kids don't necessarily operate in that same way, right? So it's right. Asking myself, okay, I need to take an assessment right now of my own heart, and ask myself, okay, how am I modeling worship? How am I modeling joy? How am I modeling devotion? And inviting them into that. And for me, it's a regular reassessment. I mean, I think I've shared it on the show before, but I've got a reminder set on my phone to reassess your prayer discipline. It actually triggered this morning. Every 2 weeks, I look at my prayer and I ask, is what I'm doing working? And when I ask that question regarding how I lead my kids as well, what it results in is pretty frequent shift of how we lead our prayer time.
Yeah. Can you define working? So you said, like, is it working?
I don't know. Is it bearing fruit in my life?
Sure.
Right. So, and I would assess that is it bearing fruit in my ministry? Is it bearing fruit in my family?
That's good.
Is it bringing peace? Right. So many. Once again, I'll reveal my own weakness here. I'm sure it's a human trait, but oftentimes when I build a routine, I'll tend toward the simplest way of accomplishing that thing. Right. So I'll have a deep conviction that I want to start engaging in the liturgy of the hours in my prayer, and over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, I will subconsciously develop the most efficient means by which I can pray the liturgy of the hours.
At first, I was chanting in my mind, and then I started just reading through it, and then now reading through it quickly.
And pumped it out.
And now it's the app, and now the app's on 2x speed, right? So there comes a point where, like, I need to ask myself, okay, this thing that was a deep movement of my heart, have I now neutralized it to the point where it's no longer even, and certainly prayer is always effective,
of course,
right?
Yeah.
So I don't mean to say that if you're praying the liturgy as a discipline, like that's a bad deal. It's certainly not.
Yeah,
but we're human beings.
Yeah, I love that. I think to answer the question on kind of how do you foster affection with kids, it's really hard to have a relationship with Jesus because he's invisible, and so, like, the Eucharist is such a benefit and a gift to us because he does come in a incarnational reality, so I can have a relationship with him. But it's very easy to be affectionate with a kid, to be affectionate with their mother or their father, because I can physically give them a hug and I can physically experience their hug, and we are body and soul. And so because we're body and soul, those are so integrated. The way I experience relationality is both physical and emotional and spiritual. And so trying to help remind them of, okay, like, it's all about relationality, and in relationship, I have to do something to show affection, right? Yeah. Affection is a turning of the heart and a physical response. And so, Giovanni, if your arms are crossed like this, I don't see that you're ready for an affectionate relationship, because your arms are communicating to me that your heart is also closed off, or and so and I, like, when one of the little ones, like, tries to start talking to me, just a simple way of, like, hey, I want to hear what you're saying, but I'm actually here right now to listen to Jesus. And so, like, to remind them, like, the reason I'm at Mass is to invest in my relationship with Jesus. And we'll invest in our relationship later, but you're here in this time to invest in this relationship with Jesus too. And the to understand that it's all that it is relationality in my relationship. And I love that the young church especially is so hungry for physical representations of reverence and affection. We have a few guests, dads that are here this week, and they were just like, they went to mass yesterday, and they're like, I can't believe how many kids were receiving on their knees, like receiving the Eucharist on their knees. And they're like, do you tell them to do that? And it's like, no, we just but we give freedom and permission. And when you see some people, the missionaries receive on their knees, the campers are like, oh, wow, I get to do this. Like
that's a possibility
it's as if
for me.
they want to. But like, we haven't modeled a reverence for them. And, but when you know that Jesus is Lord, there's something that if I know that this is God, my body just naturally responds to the reality of who this person is.
I love how that ties into the Eucharist too, because what you're saying there, I'd never thought about it like that. But actually, in growing up, we're given as a gift parents and siblings, and they give us physical affection, which allows us to trust the emotional or the spiritual affection. In the spiritual life, it's actually then that emotional and spiritual affection that lets me trust the physical affection of the Eucharist. Do you see how that kind of goes? So like, that's why it's so important to be a mother and a father who's present, who plays with their kids, who prays with their kids, who loves their kids. Like, because like the parents are giving that physical affection that then allows the young person to know, oh wait, like they emotionally love me, right? Like spiritually, they're taking care of me. Like it allows me to trust that side. And when I'm given physical affection that allows me to trust the emotional and spiritual, I can then take the emotional and spiritual and trust the physical on the other side, which leads to the Eucharist.
Well, and it's why the Catholic Church is losing its young generation, because a young person has a hard time with conceptual thoughts. We don't teach fifth graders philosophy for a reason. Their minds aren't ready, if you will, for deep conceptual thoughts. What they understand is physical reality more, right? And so the need, and when in the 70s and 80s, when the church decided to get rid of all of our physical realities, they're like, let's whitewash our churches, let's get rid of our statues, let's do away with the incense. The young people no longer, they no longer had something to hold on to. So if the physical realities aren't communicating, this is holy, this is divine, this is a mystery, then they're like, well, this is boring. Like, and it's not that they don't love Jesus or don't care; it's that they don't understand, because the way they go to understanding is through the physical realities. And so the Eucharist is so important in a middle school and high school ministry, because a middle schooler in their adolescent formation needs something tangible to see. Same reason we invite religious orders that wear habits to camp, right? Because the young person, it would be nice to have a bunch of 45-year-old women on camp that are holy, right? But it's even better to have 45-year-old women on camp who are wearing a habit, because the young person can see this 45-year-old woman and automatically see something divine, like, whoa, you chose a path. The habit is critical for the young person's formation of what it looks like to give your life completely to God.